Did you know that iron deficiency is one of the most common nutritional deficiencies in the world? A recent study found that 77% of young females were iron deficient when the ferritin cutoff of 50 micrograms per liter was used. However, your lab results show that values about 12 are normal. Why is that? Stay tuned to find out. Hi, my name is Zsolt, and my personal mission is to extend human lifespan by collectively adding 1 million years to people's lives. Let's dive into ferritin and find the truly optimal value for longevity. Ferritin is the most sensitive marker of iron storage, but it can also indicate inflammation, which makes it a bit tricky to interpret. Low ferritin, almost without exception, indicates low iron stores. But if ferritin is high, it could mean two things: either too much iron or some inflammation going on. Let's look at the ranges for women. The first is so-called normal range. This is the range you see on your standard lab result. Next, I provide the recommended ranges from well-known doctors and health organizations. Then, I looked for studies that would identify symptoms at different ferritin levels. And since this channel is about longevity, I dug up all the studies that associated ferritin with all-cause mortality. Let's go through the ranges one by one. As I mentioned earlier, the normal range is what you see on your lab result. But how was this range established? It's done by collecting samples from thousands of people and cutting off the top and bottom 2.3% of the values. The problem with this range is that it only represents what's common in the population. So it does not represent what is healthy, but what is common. When we look at the studies on symptoms, a fairly common symptom is unexplained fatigue. We have observational, but also more valuable interventional studies for this. When women who had ferritin under 50 were supplemented with iron, their fatigue significantly decreased. It is important to say that these women did not even have anemia. They just had an iron deficiency, which when corrected also improved the fatigue. In this observational study, people who had ferritin under 50 were 6.5 times more likely to have a chronic fatigue syndrome. Many women might also be interested in studies on hair loss. I found a meta-analysis of 36 observational studies. It found that women who were experiencing hair loss had on average 20 less ferritin than those without the hair loss. This study also gave the following direct recommendation: women with the hair loss can benefit from higher ferritin levels. In another smaller study, which also included men, it was interesting to see that none of the men who had ferritin above 70 had hair loss. I also found an interventional study where they compared iron supplementation to the hair loss drug minoxidil. Iron supplementation increased hair density by 16% and minoxidil only by 9%. This means that iron supplementation was twice as effective as hair loss medication. Okay, let's look at the ferritin and mortality. I found the following studies. The first showed that ferritin about 200 in men increased mortality by 50%. In women, ferritin under 44 increased mortality by 58%. To put it into perspective, smoking increased the risk of mortality by 40%. So according to the study, having low or high ferritin is worse than smoking. From the second study, it can be seen that the higher the ferritin, the higher the mortality. However, this study measured ferritin in plasma and not in serum. These cannot be reliably converted between each other. Another study found no association between ferritin and mortality. As you can see, the p-value did not reach 0.05, so these results are not statistically significant. However, this study revealed that low transferrin saturation in men increased mortality. This means that according to another iron marker, not ferritin, low iron in men was associated with increased mortality. As for the last one, I left this Mendelian randomization study. These studies work by selecting people who have genetic variants that predispose them to either deficiency or accumulation of iron. And according to this study, the lower the ferritin, the better. But the same study also showed that low and high iron in the serum increase mortality. Here, we see serum ferritin, which measures iron stores, and here serum iron, which indicates current iron levels. As you can see, not all studies came to the same conclusions, especially when done by different methods. I try to be unbiased and therefore include all relevant studies, even if they may contradict each other. So, we have gone through all the studies. What's my conclusions? I propose the following optimal range for ferritin. When you click on the icon, you can see my justifications behind it. Ferritin under 60 is clearly linked to symptoms that were corrected with supplementation in interventional studies. Observational studies have shown that both low and increased ferritin is linked to increased mortality. But since Mendelian randomization studies prefer low ferritin, I set the optimal range from 60 to 110, so above the level at which symptoms occur, but still relatively low. To wrap it all up, it's important to keep ferritin in the optimal range as both low and high values are associated with increased mortality and symptoms. And therefore, it is a strong recommendation to never supplement iron without doing a blood test first. Since ferritin can be elevated also due to inflammation, it is best to look at its values in the context of other results, mainly transferrin saturation and MCH. Therefore, I am working on a new tool called Iron Status Interpreter. You will be able to enter all the values related to iron, and it will show you your iron status in the body. In the meantime, you can interpret your ferritin values alone. Just enter your value in this field, and here it will draw you this small line. The goal is to intersect as many green ranges and as few red ranges as possible. But the last range is the most important, as it's the summary of all the ranges. The data you enter here never leaves your computer, meaning neither I nor anyone else have access to it. The entire page is also completely free with no registration or email required. The link to the Longevity Tools page is of course in the video description. Thank you for watching, and remember, normal is not always optimal. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye. This video does not constitute medical advice. Always consult your doctor.